Tonight, this ain't your father's aluminum. Do you own what you buy? And I'm going to give you some tips to get some performance back from your Windows box. Padre's Corner is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Padre's Corner is provided by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Padre's Corner, episode 18, recorded December 20th, 2014 for December 30th, 2014. Happy New Year! Welcome to Padre's Corner. I'm Father Robert Balacer, the digital Jesuit, Padre SJ in the Twit TV chat room. Padre's Corner is the show where we put you into the mind of a Jesuit priest to see if you come out sane on the other side. No, honestly, it's a place where we can just goof off. We can sit down with a bunch of geeks and gals and find some of the news that maybe has slipped through the cracks, some science, some technology, some of the stuff that matters to geeks, and, well, we just run it through the ringer. Let's go and start off with some freaking science, as we normally do. Now, I know there's a lot of you who think you know everything about aluminum. I mean, aluminum is everywhere, right? I mean, when you think about all the different things in the world that have aluminum, that use aluminum, all the super materials that are based on aluminum, it really is a part of modern life. It's light. It's strong, it's very easy to work with, and it's relatively inexpensive. Not only that, it's ridiculously easy to recycle. If you recycle aluminum properly, it takes something like 10% of the energy that it took to first create it. So it is one of these renewable resources that we use again and again and again. Oh, and by the way, I'm being reminded in the chat room that if I had class, it would be pronounced aluminium. But beyond that, it's versatile, and we use it in everything from cans and our gadgets and in wiring and in rebarb and in strengthening two high-speed trains. That's right, high-speed trains have a couple of things that they need to do. They need to be very strong. They need to be able to resist aerodynamic forces, and they also need to be incredibly light. And for most of these trains, aluminum is the perfect material to deal with it. Unfortunately, you can't build a train entirely out of aluminum because it tends to be malleable and it tends to be heavier than fiberglass, which is what the outer shell of those high-speed trains are normally made out of. You want something that's going to maintain its shape against the wind, but not weigh it down so much that you're going to require so much more power to drive it at the high speeds required for a high-speed train. So what are you to do? In the past, we've used a combination. We use steel framing, we use a lot of aluminum, but then we use those fiberglass panels on the outside that are strengthened by either steel or aluminum bars to maintain a shell integrity for the high-speed train. But that's not perfect. We found that high-speed trains can be damaged by bird strikes, by rock strikes. At those speeds, debris goes through a fiberglass shell pretty quickly, and if it doesn't hit one of the aluminum or steel pieces of reinforcement, that could be a disaster waiting to happen. Thankfully, some researchers have figured out a way to use aluminum and make it stronger than steel, lighter than fiberglass, and just oh so awesome. Strictly speaking, it's foam. Now, these researchers in Germany have figured out that they can create an aluminum foam that is a composite material. They use a combination of aluminum, magnesium, silicon, and copper, and in doing this, and in using a foaming process, they're able to create a material that is 20% lighter than fiberglass, structurally as strong as steel, and offers an impact resistance that can both protect the outer shell of the train and, here's the big one, cushion passengers in the event of a crash. Now, the researchers sandwiched a 25-millimeter layer of foam between two pieces of aluminum, just 25 millimeters thick, and they created a sandwich held together with no glue, just the electrostatic attraction of the atoms in the materials being used. The sandwich was so strong that they didn't need any steel stiffeners like you would in a fiberglass train to maintain the shape of the shell. Or, you know, because the aluminum foam itself is actually strong enough to do that. Now, as for passengers, here's something that I just found phenomenal. The use of the foam can decrease the amount of energy that is transferred into a passenger's head during an 8G impact by as much as 80% over traditional means. So it's not just a strong material, it's not just a futuristic material, it's a material that could save lives. Now, this is not the first time that we've had materials foam. We've actually had technology to create metal foam for quite a while now. The problem has always been that it's hard to work with metal foam. If you don't get the shape you want, it's not so easy to cut or to weld or to bond or to glue. What these researchers in Germany have done is to come up with a process where they can create the foam in place, in any shape, in any cut, adhered to any material, and have a shell of aluminum goodness. Now, this means that the future, in a word, is foam. Let's go ahead and go from some freaking science to some freaking hacks. This one hits a little close to home, folks. We all know that we live in a world of DRM. It's in our music. It's in our books. It's in our movies. It's in our online experience. You can't live in the modern world without running into some DRM, digital rights management. And for the most part, we understand it. We don't want to have to lock down all the materials that we enjoy. But if we don't, there is an element of society that will take advantage of that. And, well, they just won't see any original content. Who's going to write a book or make the next great movie or write the next wonderful song if they think that people are just going to take their creation, not compensate them in any way, and run with it? So we accept DRM. We may not like it, but we think that it's a necessary evil. But what if I told you that DRM was now making its way into our morning coffee? Yeah, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's totally true. If you are a worker in the modern day workplace, you probably heard about the K-Cup. That's right, the Keurig K-Cup. It was a product that's been out for about a decade, and basically it's changed the way that we look at coffee that we can make in the workplace. It makes single servings of some actually pretty dang good coffee. It's not great. I mean, it's not barista quality, but it's definitely better than the instant or the typical machine brew that we would see. Now, earlier this year, Green Mountain Roasting Company, it's the coffee pod giant, had its patent expire on the K-Cup. These things that you see in front of you on the screen right now, these are single-serving containers of coffee goodness that could be used in Keurig's machines. When those patents expired, dozens of companies started rushing to get a piece of the multi-billion-dollar home and office coffee market around the world. So what is a manufacturer to do, you might ask yourself? I mean, if your patent is about to run out, you've had a great run, you've made record profits for a decade, what will you do? Will you innovate? Will you create a new product that leaves customers wanting new coffee brewing perfection? Will you discount it? Will you make your product economically attractive? Would you increase quality? Would you run on the platform that, yeah, you can buy a counterfeit pod, you could buy a pod from Safeway, but is it gonna taste the same as the ones that you get from us, the authentic Keurig manufacturers? Yeah, you could do all that, or you could just release a brand new machine that won't brew any of those other packets. And unfortunately, that's what Keurig did. In their new machines, they've added a brand new, sparking new, customer-friendly feature, and that is, if you try to put in a pod that's not from them, the DRM is going to block it from brewing. A lot of people didn't believe this at first because it sounded too outrageous, but it's true. There are groups all around the internet right now that are showing off what happens when you try to brew a non-Keurig cup inside of a Keurig machine, just like this. You put it in just like you would with an authentic Keurig cup, but then you get this little DRM message saying, oh, I'm sorry, I know it fits, but this pack wasn't designed for this coffee maker. Unfortunately, that's what you're going to get. Now, we're not going to stand for this because we're hackers and because we're a nation of really smart people. We figured out that Keurig, not so good with the designing of the DRM. What we've been able to do is to figure out that there's just a radio frequency tag in the top of the so-called authentic K-Cups. Oh, what you can do is to cut that cup out, that little lid, and put it over the top of any pack. It doesn't have to be an authentic Keurig pack. And it will read that tag and say, oh, yeah, I guess I could brew this. Now, the cool thing about this is they figured out that the DRM was so poorly designed that you can essentially cut out the little RF tag and tape it into the inner workings of the machine. And once in there, it means that you're never going to have to worry about it again. This is actually a mod that people are asking for. In fact, we're digging a little bit deeper because now that we're getting our hands on these Keurig 2.0 machines, they're figuring out that we could probably just disable the sensor or maybe permanently enable it inside without having to worry about taping something into the actual brew space. This could just be a funny story. This could be just something that it's like, oh, silly company, they tried to DRM our coffee. And more or less, I agree. But folks, there's something else that's at work here, and it's got me a little bit more concerned than just not being able to brew my coffee. And that's what we're doing with this culture of ownership. I mean, yeah, it's a pain in the butt. It's a minimal annoyance that I have to do this little RF hack in order to get my morning coffee. But the more important question is, why should I have to do it? Since the introduction of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the DMCA that you hear so much about, the influence of that DMCA has spread so far. It was initially supposed to be used to stop people from pirating movies and audio, CDs, basically creative content. It's now been used by industry the world over to stop people from messing with their profit flow. That's not what it was designed for. We've seen people try to use it to justify not opening your iPhones. We've seen companies use it to try to justify not being able to hack your machines. I'm sure Keurig is going to be launching dozens of lawsuits over this, and it's just not right. Because what did I buy? Did I buy a cup of coffee? Did I buy a K-Cup? Did I buy a license to use your K-Cup in my coffee maker? No, I bought a machine. And if I buy the machine, well, why should you be able to tell me what I can do with it? You should be able to invalidate my warranty. Sure, that's a power that you can have. If I use my machine in a way that's not intended by the manufacturer, that's spelled out in the manual, I should have my warranty invalidated. But you shouldn't be able to take me to court because I decided I didn't want to pay a 5 times markup on a coffee cup. Now, we have seen this before. And over it gets struck down. The last major time we saw something like this was with inkjet cartridges. I'm sure if you're a geek, you've probably heard that inkjet cartridges per ounce can actually be more valuable than gold because the ink inside is so overpriced. Well, way back when, before laser printers became economical, I lived in a generation where we decided that we were going to refill our ink cartridges. And HP, especially HP, but also Lexmark and some of the other inkjet companies decided that, no, we're not going to do that. And they decided to file a suit saying, you can't do that. This is our proprietary technology, and refilling a cartridge is going against what we want, and therefore you can't do it. They went as far as to install chips into the inkjet cartridges to prove their authenticity, and the chips would actually count down. Oh, this is the wonderful part. Not only would it keep me from using a counterfeit cartridge in my printer, but it could actually stop printing when I reached a certain number of prints, even if there was ink left in the cartridge. Well, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. That's not right. I'm sorry. These people bought their printers. They can do anything that they want with it. And so in the landmark Lexmark versus the Static Control Components being a manufacturer of generic ink, they decided that consumers can do anything they want and that printer manufacturers can't stop them using DMCA, digital rights management, or copyright as an excuse not to let them do it. Now, in the end, what we found was that the print manufacturers were still playing dirty pool. In fact, there are reports that HP no longer disallows generic cartridges, but if it doesn't contain that authentic chip, it actually reduces the print quality so that now they can passive-aggressively say, see, you should have bought HP. Still, all of this, be it printer cartridges, be it safe harbor on the internet, be it whether or not we can brew our cup of coffee, I think it's a strong indictment of how we look at what we own and what we buy and what rights we give to the corporations that sell it to us. At some point, we got to ask ourselves, is it ours or isn't it? Now, folks, I thought that now might be a good time, since we are at the end of the year, to do a special look at the tech. At the end of 2014, I wanted to give all you Windows users a little something something. Here's something that I made for Know-How a while back. A cheap way, in fact, a free way for you to get some performance back from your Windows box.
Now, we all like speed. We long for it. We crave it. We want it in our PCs and our laptops, our Macs, our devices. Pretty much anything that can go faster, we want it to go faster. And so we spend a lot of money. We spend a lot of time building and breaking and upgrading and replacing, all in the quest for speed. But what if I told you Windows 7 and 8 users that there was a way for you to get up to 10% of your speed back without upgrading anything, without replacing anything, without really changing the way you use Windows or even opening up the case? Now, I know it sounds like a pipe dream. I know it sounds too good to be true. But folks, this is something that I've been doing since Windows 7 dropped on the world. Now, the tip centers around two services that are always running in the background of Windows 7 and Windows 8. The first is called Remote Assistance. Now, technically, the feature is very, very cool. It sits in the background and it waits for someone to connect to your computer and use their keyboard and mouse to show you how to fix something that's going wrong with your computer. Again, nice feature, but I'd be willing to bet that very few of us have ever actually used it. So if we're not using it, why let it sit in the background using up your resources? The second service is called System Restore. Now, this actually is a very useful service. It allows you to create save points that you can jump back to, so if you bork your system, you always have an easy way to go back to an image that was clean. Here's the problem, though. Very few of us have safe System Restore points. Very few of us have actually done the work to make sure that we've got the save points where we want them. And so we're normally going to go back to the original factory image. Well, if we're going to do that, we've got the factory installed disk, we've got the factory installed partition. We normally have some sort of way to go back to how it was when we first received the computer. If that's what we're going to do, and especially I'd suggest you do that if you get a virus, then why even have that running? Well, let me show you how to turn them off. The first thing you need to do is get to the System option in Control Panel. I usually just right-click the computer icon in the desktop and choose Properties. Once in the System menu, you'll see all the stats on your computer, but to the left of the stats, you'll see Control Panel Home, along with 4 shielded options. Click Remote Settings. You'll see a field for Allow Remote Assistance Connections to this computer. Go ahead and uncheck that box, then click Apply. You've just turned off the Remote Assistance service, but now we need to shut off System Protection. In the Control Panel, there is a tab for System Protection. Go ahead and select that. You'll notice under Protection Settings that it will tell you if one of your drives is protected. Usually it protects the drive with the operating system, but not the others. Select the drive that is protected, then click Configure. Now select the radio button to turn off System Protection and apply the change. That's it. You've just turned off the 2 background services and recovered all the horsepower that had been going to feed those 2 services. Now, I'm sure there's some of you who are skeptical that you can actually get up to 10% of your horsepower back, so I ran PCMark Vantage before and after the changes. With the services on, this PC scored 13,394. After I ran the benchmark again, making just these 2 changes, the PC scored 14,578. If you do the math, that's a 9% increase, all without buying, upgrading, or installing anything. I'm Father Robert Balacer, the Digital Jesuit, and now that you know how to take your horsepower back, go do it.
I know that there are going to be people out there who say that this is not the way to go. And you can argue the usefulness of System Restore and remote settings. And actually, there's another service in Windows that you could probably turn off, especially if you've got an SSD, and that's indexing. That will get you back another couple of percentage points. But what it comes down to is, what do you use your machine for? I am very confident in the way that I use my machine. My personal security is pretty good. I'm readily assured that I'm not going to get a virus. And if I do, I actually have components in my network that will alert me better than any system I've got on my machine. And like I said, if I ever got something that I thought was messing up my system, I wouldn't use a restore point. I would just reinstall the system, because that's the only way to be sure. In fact, even then, you're not always sure. Still, find your computer expert. Find the person who knows the way that you use your computer, and or maybe you are your computer expert, and decide for yourself if these are services that are worth a 10% hit on performance. For many of us with ultra-fast machines, maybe we'll take the hit if it means a little added security and utility. But for those who run on the ragged edge, who want every little bit of performance, who regularly buy a machine and remove every ounce of bloatware and fatware that's installed by the manufacturer, then yeah, I'd say go this little extra mile and get your performance back. Now, this is it for this episode of Padre's Corner. I know it's a lot shorter than most episodes, but I just wanted to take some time to say Happy New Year. This has been a fantastic year for me here at twit.tv. And even though we've seen some very interesting changes, I think the overall community is rallying around this thing that we do, this whole idea of broadcasting on the internet. And it's just special to be part of it. And of course, that wouldn't be possible without you, the people who come back each and every single week to watch our content. And I'm talking about all the content, not just on the Twit TV network, but every bit of content on the internet. If you look at the people who are going away from the traditional sources of entertainment and news and finding new ways built in new technologies that are synchronous and bidirectional, I think it's truly, truly inspiring. And I think that's a good way to welcome 2015. I'm Father Robert Ballester. I'll see you in the new year. And until then, Happy New Year.